At the train, sitting down so that more light fell on the envelope in his hands, Nicholas pulled out a long letter. Several sheets were written in the large handwriting of his father, Ben, and this was the fourth or maybe even fifth time Nicholas had read the lines. The boy was not sentimental by nature. He had been brought up a real man, capable of surviving in the woods if he had to. However, while serving in the army so far away from home, everything was perceived more emotionally. Father and son had always been very close. Nicholas's mother died in childbirth, leaving the infant in her husband's arms. Ben, who lost his beloved wife and found his heir on the same day, had a difficult time at first. Nicholas's grandmother, Ben's mother, helped with the child, but soon she gave up her soul to God as well. So when Nicholas was almost 3, Ben was raising his son alone, doing everything possible for his well-being. He was a good father, attentive, caring, moderately strict, and sincerely loving his son. No wonder they became so close. How Nicholas ran his eyes over the lines he had learnt by heart. His father wrote about everything: neighbors, his job, news from their village. "Nicholas, when you get back home from the army, you'll help me around the house," wrote Ben, who obviously missed his son. "Our steam bath needs fixing. The roof is all screwed up. We'll go fishing with you at the river." Not only did the man make plans, but he also shared more intriguing information. "You know, Nicholas, I have more news for you. I met a woman, Clara. She's so caring. I'm too old to go out on dates, so I asked her to move into our house. She said yes. I hope you two will get along." Nicholas's lips stretched into a smile again. His father's handwriting was changing at this point, as if he was worried about how his son would take such news. But he was worried and vain. Nicholas was sincerely happy for his father. His father had been lonely all his life, devoting his entire life to raising a child. A woman's touch could certainly brighten up their home and bring a special coziness to it. He hopes Clara makes him a delicious breakfast and gives him love and affection. Moreover, Nicholas himself was not going to spend his entire life with his father. It was wonderful that now he had someone to leave his father's well-being to, and he had no doubt that he would like Clara. Nicholas sighed and looked out the train window. It seemed to him as if the sky had become even more blue and clear. After arriving to his homeland, all the way to his house, Nicholas walked, picking up dust on his army boots. He wanted to taste this walk back to his home. A handsome brunette in a beautiful parade uniform often caught the eyes of passerby. They say that joy and sorrow walk side by side and sometimes hold hands. So if a happy boy unexpectedly had to experience grief so much that Nicholas almost suffocated in his own despair. "Nicholas, is that you?" a neighbor greeted the boy. "Yes, I'm back. Glad to see you," Nicholas smiled broadly. The man rushed towards him with a big hug. He had always been close to their family. Nicholas had grown up before his eyes after hugging the young soldier. The neighbor suddenly became despondent. He looked at Nicholas's house, which Nicholas was impatient to get into, and then sighed heavily. "Hey, Nicholas," the man grimaced, looking at the boy with some pain in his eyes. How could that happen? Nicholas frowned, not understanding the strange change of mood of the perpetually cheerful man. "What happened?" said Nicholas. "Did something happen to you? Is everything all right with your family?" "You don't know yet, do you?" The neighbor looked at the boy dumbfounded and averted his look. "Oh." The man hesitantly scratched at the weak old stubble on his face. He opened his mouth to reply, but then the door to the Blackwoods house swung open. Nicholas was all straightened up, expecting to meet his father. But there is a woman's figure in the doorway dressed in all black, looking at the stranger. Nicholas realized that she must be Clara. She was strangely dressed the way we only dress for funerals. "Are you Nicholas?" The woman approached the boy first. "I'm Clara. Your father must have told you about me. We got married not long ago."
Nicholas nodded, but he didn't know about the wedding. "Yeah, it's nice to meet you, but where's my dad?" Nicholas took a step toward the house, but Clara stopped him by grabbing his sleeve. The boy looked at the woman incomprehensibly. Her lips quivered and her eyes filled with tears. "Nicholas, Ben has been waiting for you, waiting so long, but he didn't make it. We buried your father," the woman said in a sorrowful tone, sobbing. "There is a funeral yesterday." The woman let go of Nicholas, wiping away her tears. Nicholas looked at Clara with a frown. He could hear every word, but he refused to believe it. His father couldn't be dead. It was nonsense. "What? Buried?" he questioned, muffling. feeling the ground slipping from under his feet. His heart failed, Clara explained, sniffing a red nose. Uncle Jack, an unwilling witness to the scene, coughed, tapped the dazed Nicholas on the shoulder and said softly, "Nicholas, you know if you need anything, my doors are always open to you. Be strong, boy. I'm sorry." Nicholas wanted to say something, or at least nod, but he couldn't. He stood staring into the distance, and everything that was going on still didn't make sense in his head. His dad was a perfectly healthy, strong man who loved fishing and hunting. Nicholas goes to the kitchen and sat down in a chair. He stared at his father's empty seat with a thoughtless stare. "Would you like me to take you to the cemetery?" suggested Clara, suddenly appearing beside him. "He is buried next to your mother." Nicholas's whole body shuddered in shock. When did she come in? "No, I'll go myself," Nicholas muttered hoarsely. The woman nodded, then fussed and offered the boys something to eat. Except that Nicholas could neither eat nor drink. Nicholas was so immersed in his own sadness that he couldn't even formulate a thought. Still in his army uniform, Nicholas walked toward the cemetery. On his way, he went to the local store to get a bottle of alcohol to drown his sorrow somehow. There, he decided to get 2 bottles and some snacks. When he came to his mother's grave, he saw that the plot next to it was no longer empty. There was a fresh grave with a Christian cross, and beneath it, a framed photo. From the photo, his father looks and smiles so friendly, so warmly, as if he were happy to finally see his son. At that moment, Nicholas let the tears flow. After calming down a bit, he sat down next to his father and placed a shot glass in front of him. Nicholas sat at the grave for a long time, talking to his father. He would either rebuke his father for not having waited or apologize for his sins. This was the condition in which Nicholas was found by the local tramps. It was already dusk, it was hard to see anything, and it took them a while to spot Nicholas sitting by the grave. "Oh, look who's there by the graves," one of the tramps exclaimed when he saw someone moving near a fresh grave. The other jumped up, crossing himself. "Who's there?" he shouted, but his voice wavered. "Well, it's me," muttered Nicholas, looking at the uninvited guests. "What are you doing here, robbing graves?" The tramps looked at each other, but they didn't deny it. They really hoped to get something here. "Why not? The dead don't care anymore. Why are you sitting here all alone like a ghost? Why are you scaring people?" One of the tramps tried to change the subject. "I'm not alone. I'm here with my dad for the last time." Nicholas nodded at the picture of his dad. "I see. Well, condolences." The tramps nodded understandingly. Alcohol loosened the guy's tongue, and he decided that pouring out his soul to the 2 tramps would be a great idea. The strange company got to talking. Nicholas told them how he returned from the army, shocked by the terrible news about his father. One of the tramps suggested, Let's say goodbye. We'll help you." "What do you mean? How?" Nicholas focused his blurry gaze on his companion. "Well, dig the grave, lift the lid off the coffin. If he was buried yesterday, the body hasn't even begun to decompose. We'll help you, and you give us some money," the man exclaimed. "What are you talking about?" exclaimed Nicholas, frightened. "What do you mean, digging up a grave? Are you out of your mind?" "Oh, don't yell. Think about it. What difference does it make? There's no security. There's no one around. We'll dig it up quickly. Say goodbye and bury him back. That's all. Shovels are easy to get here, and it's a good deed. Your father would want you to say goodbye to him, wouldn't he?" said the tramp. Either the grief was so heavy or the alcohol had given the desperate lad courage, but after about 10 minutes, the tramps persuaded him to do the craziest deed in his life. The work began quickly. The tramps got 3 shovels and everyone dashingly worked with them. "That's it. There's a coffin lid." "Let's use our hands," shouted the tramp as he reached the solid surface. It was as if a sixth sense poked him in the back and told him to look at his dead father with his own eyes. Only then he would be able to let him go. But as soon as Nicholas leaned over the corpse, he cried out in horror, "That's not my father!" The boy stared in shock at a complete stranger's face and recoiled from the coffin. He instantly sobered up. It wasn't his father in the coffin, which meant that there was a chance his father was alive. Suddenly, the tearful face of the inconsolable widow Clara appeared before his eyes. After all, she was the one who had buried his father. Together with his new acquaintances, the guy restored the grave to its former state, generously rewarding the tramps. He asked them to keep quiet and went on his way. Nicholas returned to the house, but he did not show that he suspected Clara of something. He played the part of the grieving son and questioned his stepmother. "Clara, tell me about my father. After all, he spends his last days with you," he asked during dinner. "What do you want to know, Nicholas?" The woman asked kindly. "Well, everything. I'm interested in everything. How did you meet him? How did you live together? Why did you get married without waiting for me?" Nicholas asked with sincere attention. The woman began to tell Nicholas about their big and sincere love. But the more she talked, the more the guy turned gloomy. Why did she tell him they used to go mushrooming in the woods and bake mushroom pies if his father didn't like mushrooms? And there are too many such contradictions. "And we didn't have a wedding party at all. We just registered the marriage at the registry office," the woman continued. "You know, it's not decent for a woman to live under the same roof with a man without getting married. What would people think? We thought when you return, we'll throw a big party to celebrate your return in our wedding." And that's how it turned out. The woman let out another sobbing, turning back to the window. But Nicholas was sure she didn't mean to cry. "How did my father feel? Did he have a heart attack all of a sudden? A year ago, he was perfectly healthy, jogging more than I was." "Does it ever happen any other way, Nicholas?" The woman shrugged, but getting to feel uncomfortable with his questions. "It's always unexpected. God chooses who to take away. We are powerless here. Both young and old die." Thus, Nicholas lived with his stepmother for a week, noticing more and more that things were not right. Clara often left the house on various pretexts. One day, she went out to get bread but came back empty-handed, too happy for a widow. So Nicholas decided to follow her, and his efforts paid off that very evening. "Nicholas, I'm going to see my neighbor. I promised I'd help her bake a cake," the woman announced, primping herself in front of the mirror. Nicholas nodded, looking indifferent. As soon as Clara left the house, the boy followed her. Good thing the army taught him a lot. When she reached her neighbor's house, Clara didn't even slow, skipping briskly past it. Nicholas smirked, convinced of his hunch. The widow came to the house where the chief doctor of the local hospital, Ezra Miller, lived. Looking around, the woman headed for the front door and knocked. The owner of the house opened the door and, smiling happily, let her in. Sneaking closer to the open window where the light was on, the boy began to listen. He got shocked when the distinct sounds of kissing reached his ears. "I've missed you so much." The woman finally pulled away from Ezra. "I don't want to live apart anymore, Ezra. I'm sick of being your secret mistress." "I don't want that either, Clara. But be patient a little longer," the man pleaded. "We're halfway there. We can't give it all up now. We just got rid of the old jackass." At that moment, without giving away his presence, Nicholas took his phone out of his pocket and with trembling hands started recording. "That's easy for you to say," the woman pursed her lips. "I'm the one who has to live with his strange son now, cook for him, answer his questions. Don't worry about it. As soon as he leaves, you and I will get married. You, as a respectable widow, will grieve for a while, and then we will pretend that I helped you to cope with the grief. And so we got close. No one's going to think or say anything." "Sometimes I think Nicholas is suspecting something," the woman complained to her accomplice. "He's always asking me about his father's health, about our life together." "Never mind, he can't prove anything anyway. All of the certificates are completely forged. I paid off the middleman, and they'll never find him in the madhouse, that's for sure," the doctor reassured her. Nicholas gritted his teeth so hard, he almost turned them to powder. It turned out that Clara had been feeding Ben psychotropic drugs, and then they had placed him in a psychiatric hospital. They had faked Ben's death by putting the corpse of some homeless man in the coffin. The house and all of the property now belongs to Clara, according to Ben's strange will, which Nicholas had never seen before. Obviously, all this paperwork was illegal, as his father was still alive. That night, Nicholas was at the police station. The head doctor and his mistress were arrested in the morning. His father was found in a psychiatric hospital. Nicholas, seeing the condition of his father, could not hold back tears. However, his weakness and muddy eyes from the medication did not matter. The main thing was that he was alive, and Nicholas would get him back to health.